This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Max and Mia podcast. I'm Mia.
And I'm Max. We're so happy you're here with us today.
Let me ask you something, listener. Are you tired of studying English, feeling like you're making progress, learning grammar, knowing the vocabulary? But then, when it's time to actually speak, you forget everything?
You mispronounce words, all that grammar just disappears, and you end up creating sentences that don't even make sense.
Well, let me tell you something. You're not alone. That's completely normal. And honestly, it's not your fault.
The real problem is that you're just not practicing the right way.
So let me ask you this. How much time do you spend speaking English every day? An hour? Half an hour? 5 minutes?
Most likely, that number is 0. And if you really want to learn how to speak English, we need to talk. Like, actually talk.
Your mouth is a muscle too, you know. We need to train it. We need to get used to those tricky words and learn to speak without overthinking. Just flow.
That's exactly why today we're bringing you an episode where you won't just improve your listening skills.
You'll also put your speaking skills to the test.
We're going to cover everyday situations, the ones they almost never teach you in a traditional course.
We're going way beyond the typical, "How are you?" or talking about the weather.
Today, we're leaving those topics behind and focusing on conversations you're definitely going to face at some point.
And trust us, you need to be ready for them. So, let's go. Okay, let's start with our first scenario, dealing with a problem at home or asking someone for help.
This happens to everyone. Maybe the sink is leaking, the power goes out, or your internet stops working right before an important call.
Exactly. And before we jump into the conversation, we want to teach you 2 useful chunks. Remember, a chunk is just a group of words that go together naturally, so instead of memorizing single words, you memorize the whole phrase.
The first chunk is something's wrong with the. You can use this to describe almost any problem. For example, something's wrong with the washing machine, or something's wrong with my phone.
It's super flexible. And the second chunk is, do you think you could... This one is great for asking for help politely without sounding demanding. For example, do you think you could take a look at this? Or, do you think you could help me move this table?
Perfect. Keep those 2 in mind because we're going to use them right now.
So, picture this. You're at home. It's Sunday night, and suddenly the lights go out.
Oh, I hate when that happens. Okay, first things first. Who do you even call in that situation?
Well, it depends. If it's just your apartment, you might check the breaker first before calling anyone.
Right. And if it's the whole building, you probably want to call the building manager or a neighbor who might know what's going on.
Exactly. And this is where our chunk comes in. You could say, "Hey, sorry to bother you this late, but something's wrong with the power in my apartment. Do you think you could help me check it?"
That sounds polite, and it gets straight to the point. You're not being rude. You're just explaining the problem clearly and asking for help in a natural way.
That's the key. A lot of students think they need to use super formal language to sound polite, but honestly, being clear and friendly works just as well.
Totally. Another example. Let's say your Wi-Fi stops working right before an online meeting.
Oh, that's stressful.
So you'd call your provider and say something like, "Hi, something's wrong with my internet connection, and I have a meeting in 10 minutes. Do you think you could help me fix this quickly?"
See, same structure, different situation. That's the beauty of chunks. You can reuse them in so many contexts.
Exactly. And once you get comfortable with these phrases, you won't need to translate from your native language anymore. They just come out naturally.
All right, now it's your turn. This is where you pause the episode and practice speaking out loud.
Here's your first scenario. Imagine your neighbor's music is really loud and you can't sleep. What would you say to them?
Go ahead. Pause it and answer using one of our chunks.
Okay, here's what I'd probably say. Hey, sorry to bother you, but the music is a bit too loud for me right now. Do you think you could turn it down a little?
Nice, simple, and polite. No drama. Now here's your second scenario. Imagine you're renting an apartment and the shower suddenly stops working. What would you tell your landlord?
Pause it again and say your answer out loud.
I'll go ahead and share mine. I'd probably text something like, "Hi, sorry to bother you, but something's wrong with the shower. Do you think you could send someone to fix it today?"
See? Short, clear, and polite.
Exactly, and that's really all you need in real life.
Great job, everyone. That's it for our first scenario.
Now, let's move to our next one, which is a classic. Ordering an Uber and talking to the driver.
This one's really useful too, because sometimes the driver asks you something, or you need to explain where you are, and it can get a little confusing if you're not ready for it.
So, stick around, because in the next part, we'll teach you exactly what to say.
All right, this next one is something almost everyone deals with, especially if you're traveling or living in a big city. Ordering a ride and actually communicating with the driver.
And this time, we're stepping it up a bit. These chunks are more B1, B2 level. So if you already master the basics, this is where you'll really start sounding natural.
The first chunk is, would it be possible to... It's a bit more polished than just asking directly, and it works great when you want to sound respectful without being overly formal. For example, would it be possible to stop here for a second?
I love that one because it's flexible enough for lots of situations, not just rides. The second chunk is, I'll hop out right here. It's a casual way of saying you're going to get out of the car at a specific spot, instead of saying something stiff like, I will exit the vehicle here.
Exactly. Native speakers use hop out all the time. It sounds light and natural, way better than a textbook phrase.
Okay, so let's set the scene. You've just ordered your ride, and the driver calls you because he can't find the exact location.
This happens constantly, especially if you're in a new area or the app shows the wrong PIN.
Right, so the driver might say something like, Hey, I'm here, but I don't see you. And you'd reply, Oh, I'm actually right around the corner, near the pharmacy. Would it be possible to wait just one more minute?
That's such a natural way to handle it. You're being polite, but also clear about where you are.
And once you're in the car, sometimes you need small talk too, right? Like if the driver asks where you're headed or why you're in town.
Totally. You could say something simple like, I'm actually here for work, or I'm just visiting some friends for the weekend. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep the conversation going.
And here's where our second chunk fits perfectly. Let's say you're getting close to your destination, but traffic is bad, and you don't want to wait for the driver to find the exact spot.
You could say, actually, this is fine, I'll hop out right here. It shows you're flexible, and it saves everyone time.
Exactly. Drivers really appreciate that. It's such a small phrase, but it makes you sound like you actually live there, not like a tourist reading from a script.
And one more useful thing. If the driver takes a route you're not sure about, you can just ask, "Would it be possible to take the highway instead? I'm a bit short on time." Polite, direct, and it gets the message across. All right, pause time. Let's put this into practice.
Here's your first scenario. Imagine you're in the car and the driver is going the wrong way. What would you say to correct him politely?
Go ahead and answer out loud before we continue.
Okay, I'll go first. I'd probably say, "Sorry, I think we missed the turn. Would it be possible to go back and take the next street on the right?"
Nice, calm and clear. No awkward tension. Now here's your second scenario. You're almost at your destination, but there's heavy traffic ahead and you'd rather just walk the last block. What do you say to the driver?
Pause it and give it a try.
I'll share what I'd say. Something like, "Don't worry about the traffic. I'll hop out right here. This is close enough." Simple and to the point.
Perfect. That's exactly the kind of natural response we're looking for.
All right, that wraps up our second scenario.
Next up, we're heading somewhere everyone can relate to. Ordering coffee or breakfast in a natural way without sounding like you memorized a script.
This one's packed with small expressions that make a huge difference, so don't skip it.
Okay, this next one seems simple on the surface, ordering coffee or breakfast. But honestly, this is where a lot of learners freeze up. There's always background noise, a line behind you, and a barista talking fast.
Exactly. So let's give you 2 more chunks to help you sound natural instead of hesitant. The first one is, I'll go with. It's a smooth way to make your choice without sounding too formal. Like, I'll go with the oat milk latte, or I'll go with the avocado toast.
It's such a small phrase, but it instantly makes you sound more confident than just pointing at the menu. The second chunk is, do you happen to have... This one's great when you're not sure if something's available, and you want to ask without sounding demanding. For example, do you happen to have any gluten-free options?
Both of these are super common in real conversations, way more natural than the textbook version, which is usually something stiff like, "I would like to order," or "Do you have?"
Right? Those aren't wrong, but they can sound a bit robotic if that's all you ever use.
All right. Let's set the scene. You walk into a cafe, there's a short line, and the menu has way more options than you expected.
That happens to me every time, honestly. I freeze for a second because there are like 10 types of milk now.
Right. So when it's your turn, instead of just saying coffee, you could say, "I'll go with a medium cappuccino, please." Clear, simple, and it moves the line along.
And if you have a specific need, that's where our second chunk comes in. You could ask, "Do you happen to have almond milk instead of regular milk?" It sounds polite, and it doesn't put pressure on the barista.
Exactly. And sometimes they'll throw in extra questions too, like size, or if you want it hot or iced. You just answer naturally, "I'll go with a large iced, please."
And for breakfast, it works the same way. Let's say you're deciding between 2 things on the menu.
You could say something like, "Actually, I'll go with the eggs instead of the pancakes, thanks." It shows you changed your mind smoothly, without over-explaining.
And if you're not sure what something is, you can just ask, "Do you happen to have a smaller portion of that?" Or, "Do you happen to have something without dairy?"
These chunks basically cover you in almost any food-related situation, not just coffee shops.
All right, time to put you on the spot a little bit. This one's going to be a bit trickier.
Here's your first scenario. You're at a busy cafe. There's a long line behind you, and you already gave your order, but you suddenly remember you actually wanted oat milk instead of regular milk. What do you say to fix it quickly without holding up the whole line?
Pause the episode and answer that one out loud.
I'll share what I'd say. Something like, "Sorry, quick change. Could I actually get that with oat milk instead? I completely forgot to mention it." Short, direct, and it doesn't waste anyone's time.
Nice, that's a really natural fix.
Now here's your second scenario, and this one's a bit more uncomfortable. The barista just handed you your order, but it's completely wrong. It's not even close to what you asked for, and there's still a line of people waiting behind you.
Pause it again and think about how you'd handle that politely without making a scene or holding things up.
Go ahead and give it a try before we continue.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share mine. I'd probably say, "I think there might be a mix-up. I actually ordered the iced latte, not this one. Do you happen to have a second to fix it?" It's polite, but it's also clear that something needs to change.
That's a great example. Calm, respectful, but still direct enough to solve the problem.
Exactly. And that's really the goal with all of these chunks, sounding natural even when the situation's a little stressful.
Great job today, everyone. Between resolving problems at home, dealing with an Uber driver, and now ordering food with confidence, you've got some seriously useful tools in your pocket.
And we're not done yet. Next up, we're tackling something that trips up even advanced learners, asking for directions and actually using public transportation.
This one's huge because getting lost in a new city and not understanding what someone's telling you can be really stressful. So stick around, we've got you covered.
All right, this scenario's a classic, but it's also one of the trickiest because when someone gives you directions, they usually talk fast and they expect you to just follow along.
Exactly. So let's give you two more chunks. The first one is keep going until you... It's how native speakers usually explain a route instead of listing every single step. For example, keep going until you see the pharmacy, then turn left.
It's such a natural way to give directions, way more common than something like continue straight and then turn. The second chunk is, am I on the right track for? This one's perfect when you're not totally sure you're heading the right way and you want to double check with someone.
Right. It sounds way more natural than just asking, "Is this the right way?" over and over. "Am I on the right track for the train station?" gives you a bit more confidence when you say it.
And both of these work whether you're walking, taking the bus, or figuring out the subway.
Okay, let's set the scene. You just got off a train in a city you've never visited, and you have no idea which exit to take.
That's happened to me so many times. You just start walking and hope for the best.
Exactly. So instead of guessing, you could stop someone and say, "Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but am I on the right track for the main square?"
And usually people respond with something like, "Yeah, you're close. Just keep going until you hit the second traffic light, then turn right."
See, that's exactly how real directions sound, casual and based on landmarks, not exact distances.
And if you're using public transportation, sometimes you need to ask which bus or line to take. You could say something like, "Do you know if this bus goes downtown?" Or use our chunk, "Am I on the right track for the number 12 bus?"
And once someone tells you, you might still be a little unsure. So it helps to confirm, "Okay, so I keep going until the next stop, and then I switch lines, right?"
Exactly. Repeating it back like that also helps you process the information while you practice your listening.
And honestly, locals really appreciate it when you ask, instead of just wandering around looking lost.
All right, let's make this one a bit tricky too, since we know you're up for it by now.
Here's your first scenario. You're walking through a city and you think you're close to your hotel, but nothing looks familiar anymore. You spot a stranger nearby. What do you say to check if you're heading the right way?
Pause the episode and say your answer out loud.
I'll go first. I'd probably say, "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but am I on the right track for the Grand Hotel? I think I might have taken a wrong turn." It's polite, and it gets straight to the point.
Nice, and it also shows a bit of self-awareness, which makes it sound way more natural.
Now here's your second scenario, and it's a bit more complicated. You're on a bus, and you're not sure if it actually stops near your destination. The driver looks busy, and there's no time to waste before your stop comes up.
Pause it again, and think about how you'd ask quickly without slowing things down too much.
Give it your best shot before we move on.
Okay, I'll share mine. I'd say something like, "Sorry, quick question. Does this bus stop anywhere near the museum? I don't want to miss it." Short, clear, and it respects that the driver's busy.
That's a great example. It's confident, but it still sounds considerate.
Exactly, and that balance is really what we're going for with all of these chunks.
Amazing work today, everyone. You've now got tools for problems at home, Ubers, coffee shops, and getting around a new city.
And there's one more everyday situation we can't skip: letting someone know you're running late.
Oh, this one's essential because it happens to literally everyone at some point, and how you say it can make a huge difference in how it comes across. Let's get into it.
Okay, so this scenario's short, but it's one you'll use constantly, whether it's with a boss, a friend, or a client.
Exactly. And let's be honest, most learners just say, "I'm late," and leave it at that. But there's a much smoother way to handle it. The first chunk is, "I'm running a little behind." It's way more natural than "I'm late," and it doesn't sound as blunt.
Right, and you can adjust it depending on the situation, like, "I'm running about 10 minutes behind," or just, "I'm running a little behind today."
The second chunk is, "I should be there by." It's perfect for giving someone a clear time without making it sound like a big deal. For example, "I should be there by 9:15.
Both of these keep things calm and professional instead of sounding stressed out or making a huge apology out of it.
All right, let's set the scene. You're heading to work, and traffic's way worse than usual. You already know you're not going to make it on time.
That's such a common situation. The key is texting or calling before you're actually late, not after.
Exactly, so you could send a quick message like, "Hey, I'm running a little behind because of traffic. I should be there by 9:30. Simple, honest, and it gives the other person a clear expectation.
And if it's something more casual, like meeting a friend for coffee, you don't even need to explain much. Just, "Hey, running a bit behind, be there in 15.
Right. The tone changes depending on who you're talking to, but the structure stays pretty much the same.
And sometimes you might need to add a quick reason too, without going into a whole story. Something like, "Sorry, I'm running a little behind, my train got delayed, I should be there by 10.
That's the sweet spot. Short, clear, and it doesn't feel like you're over-explaining or making excuses.
Exactly. And honestly, people appreciate a heads up way more than a long apology once you finally show up.
All right, let's throw a couple of situations your way.
Here's your first scenario. You have an important job interview this morning, but your alarm didn't go off, and now you're seriously rushing. You need to message the interviewer right away. What do you say?
Pause it and say your answer out loud before we continue.
I'll share mine first. I'd probably write, "Good morning. I'm so sorry. I'm running a little behind due to an unexpected issue. I should be there by 9:40. Thank you for your patience." A bit more formal since it's an interview.
Nice. That keeps it professional without sounding careless.
Now here's your second scenario, and this one's a little trickier. You're meeting your boss for an important call, but you're stuck in an elevator that suddenly stopped working, and you have no idea how long it'll take to get out.
Pause it again and think about how you'd explain that without being able to give an exact time.
Give it a shot before we move on.
All right, I'll share mine. Something like, "Hey, I'm actually stuck in an elevator R right now. I'm not sure exactly when I'll be out, but I'll message you the moment I do." It's honest, and it manages expectations even without a clear time.
That's a great example, because not every situation gives you a perfect answer. And that's okay too.
Exactly, and that flexibility is part of sounding natural in English.
Great job again, everyone. So far, we've covered problems at home, Ubers, coffee shops, directions, and now running late.
And there's one more we really can't leave out, having a casual conversation with coworkers.
This one's all about small talk, the kind that happens in break rooms or right before a meeting starts. And it's honestly one of the trickiest things to master naturally. So don't go anywhere, because that's exactly what's coming up next.
All right, this one's less about solving a problem and more about connecting with people, which honestly can feel even harder.
Totally agree. Small talk trips up so many learners because there's no clear goal. You're just chatting to build a relationship. The first chunk is, how's it going with... It's a really natural way to ask about something specific instead of just a generic, how are you? For example, how's it going with that project you mentioned?
It shows you actually remember what someone told you before, which makes the conversation feel more genuine. The second chunk is, I know what you mean. It's perfect for showing agreement or empathy without having to come up with a whole new sentence. Like, I know what you mean. Mondays are rough for me, too.
Both of these keep a conversation flowing naturally, instead of just answering with a flat good or yeah, and letting the conversation die right there.
Okay, let's set the scene. You're in the break room and a coworker walks in to grab some coffee too.
This happens constantly, and honestly, the awkward silence is the worst part.
Right. So instead of just nodding, you could say, "Hey, how's it going with that presentation you had on Monday?" It shows interest, and it gives them something specific to talk about.
And they might respond with something like, "Oh, honestly, it went better than I expected, but I was so nervous beforehand." And that's where you'd say, "I know what you mean. Public speaking always gets me too."
Exactly. That little response keeps things going without forcing you to think of something completely new.
And sometimes coworkers just want to vent a little, like complaining about a long meeting or a busy week. You don't need a solution, just a bit of understanding.
Right. So, if someone says, "This week's been absolutely crazy, I haven't had a break," you can just say, I know what you mean. It's been nonstop for me too. It validates what they're feeling without turning it into a whole discussion.
And if you want to keep the conversation going a bit longer, you can always follow up with, "So, how's it going with the new team? Are you settling in okay?"
That's the beauty of small talk. It's less about saying something impressive and more about showing genuine interest.
All right, let's make this one a bit more real, too.
Here's your first scenario. You're waiting for a meeting to start, and a coworker you don't know that well sits down next to you. They mention they've been really stressed lately because of a big deadline. What do you say to keep the conversation natural and show you actually care?
Pause it and answer out loud before we keep going.
I'll share mine first. I'd probably say, "I know what you mean. Deadlines like that can be brutal. How's it going with the rest of the project? Is it close to done?" It shows empathy and it keeps the conversation open.
Nice, that flows really naturally.
Now here's your second scenario, and this one's a bit trickier. A coworker mentions something you completely forgot about, like a project update they told you about weeks ago, and you have no idea what they're talking about. But you don't want to seem like you weren't listening.
Pause it again and think about how you'd handle that smoothly without admitting you totally forgot.
Give it a shot.
Okay, I'll share mine. I'd probably say, "Oh, right. Remind me quickly, how's it going with that now? I want to make sure I've got the latest update." It covers you without being awkward about it.
That's a really smart way to handle it. Honestly, it happens to everyone.
Exactly. And that's really what natural conversation is about, keeping things flowing even when you're a little lost.
Great work again, everyone. That's problems at home, Ubers, coffee shops, directions, running late, and now small talk with coworkers.
And there's one more scenario that ties in perfectly with this last one, asking for help at work.
This one's huge because a lot of people feel nervous asking for help in a professional setting, especially in a second language. So stick around, because we're about to fix that too.
Okay, this scenario's really important because a lot of learners avoid asking for help at work simply because they're not sure how to phrase it without sounding unsure of themselves.
Exactly. And that's such a common fear, but honestly, asking for help the right way actually makes you look more professional, not less. The first chunk is, "Would you mind walking me through?" It's a polished way to ask someone to explain something step by step. For example, "Would you mind walking me through this report before I send it?"
It sounds way more confident than just saying, "I don't understand this." The second chunk is, "I just want to make sure I'm on the right track." This one's perfect when you've already tried something, but you want to confirm you're doing it correctly before going any further.
Right? It shows initiative. Because you're not just asking blindly, you're checking in after already putting in some effort.
All right, let's set the scene. You just started a new task, and there's a step in the process you're not totally sure about.
This happens all the time, especially when you're new or the instructions were a bit vague.
Right, so instead of guessing and hoping for the best, you could go to a coworker and say, "Hey, sorry to interrupt. Would you mind walking me through how you usually handle this part?"
That's such a natural way to ask. It doesn't sound needy, it sounds like you're being thorough.
And let's say you've already started the task, but you want to double check before submitting it. You could say, "I just want to make sure I'm on the right track. Does this look correct to you?"
Exactly. That phrase alone shows you've already put in effort. You're just confirming, not asking someone to do it for you.
And sometimes it's not even a task. It could be understanding a new system or software. You could say, "Would you mind walking me through how this platform works? I still get a little lost in it."
Right? And most coworkers are more than happy to help when you ask like that, because it feels collaborative, not like you're avoiding the work.
Exactly. And honestly, most people would rather explain something twice than watch you struggle in silence and make a bigger mistake later.
All right, let's put you in a couple of tricky situations.
Here's your first scenario. You're halfway through a task your manager assigned, but you suddenly realize you're not sure you're following the instructions correctly, and you don't want to keep going in the wrong direction. What do you say to a coworker nearby?
Pause it and answer out loud before we continue.
I'll share mine first. I'd probably say, "Hey, do you have a second? I just want to make sure I'm on the right track with this. Could you take a quick look?" It's direct, but it doesn't sound like I'm lost.
Nice. That keeps things professional and confident.
Now here's your second scenario, and it's a bit more uncomfortable. You've already asked a coworker for help once today, but you still don't fully understand the process, and you feel a little embarrassed to ask again.
Pause it again and think about how you'd bring it up without feeling like you're bothering them too much.
Give it your best shot.
Okay, I'll share mine. I'd say something like, "Sorry to bother you again. I know I asked earlier, but would you mind walking me through that last part one more time? I want to get it right." It acknowledges the situation honestly, without making a big deal out of it.
That's such a solid way to handle it. Honestly, everyone's been there.
Exactly. And asking twice isn't a weakness. It just means you actually care about doing it well.
Great job again, everyone. We've now covered problems at home. Ubers, coffee shops, directions, running late, small talk, and asking for help.
And there's one more big one left, talking to your boss or supervisor directly.
This one covers asking for information, explaining a problem, and talking about schedules or responsibilities, all the situations that can feel a bit intimidating in English. So, don't go anywhere, because we're wrapping things up with that one.
All right. This one tends to make people nervous because there's a bit more pressure when you're talking to someone above you and you want to sound respectful but not overly stiff.
Exactly. So, let's give you two chunks that strike that balance perfectly. The first one is, "I wanted to check in about..." It's a smooth way to bring up a topic, whether it's asking for information or following up on something. For example, "I wanted to check in about the deadline for this project."
It sounds proactive instead of like you're complaining or demanding an answer. The second chunk is, "Would it be okay if..." This one's great for asking permission, whether it's about your schedule, a task, or a responsibility you want to adjust. Like, "Would it be okay if I started a bit later on Fridays?"
Both of these keep things professional, but they still sound human, not like you copied a phrase straight out of a business textbook.
Okay, let's set the scene. You've been given a deadline, but as the days go by, you realize it's honestly not realistic given everything else on your plate.
That's such a common situation, and a lot of people just stay quiet and stress about it instead of speaking up early.
Right, so instead of waiting until the last minute, you could go to your supervisor and say, "Hi, do you have a minute? I wanted to check in about the deadline for the report. I think I might need a couple more days.
That's so much better than showing up late without any warning. It shows you're on top of things, even when there's a problem.
Exactly. And let's say it's not about a deadline, but about your schedule. Maybe you have an appointment, and you need to shift your hours for one day.
You could say, "Would it be okay if I came in an hour later on Thursday? I have an appointment I can't move." Simple, respectful, and it gives a clear reason without oversharing.
Right. And sometimes it's about responsibilities too. Like if you feel like you've taken on more than you should or something wasn't clearly explained.
In that case, you could say, "I wanted to check in about my responsibilities on this project. I want to make sure I understand exactly what's expected of me." That opens up the conversation without sounding like you're complaining.
Exactly. And most supervisors actually appreciate that kind of clarity. It makes their job easier too.
All right, time for a couple of tricky ones to wrap this up.
Here's your first scenario. You've been assigned a task, but halfway through you realize the instructions were unclear and you're honestly not sure if you're doing it the way your supervisor expects. What do you say to bring this up?
Pause it and say your answer out loud.
I'll go first. I'd probably say, "Hi, I wanted to check in about this task. I just want to make sure I'm approaching it the way you had in mind." It's respectful and it opens the door for clarification.
Nice. That's a really smooth way to handle it.
Now here's your second scenario, and it's a bit more delicate. You need to leave early one day for something personal, but you're a little nervous your supervisor might not be okay with it, since it's short notice.
Pause it again and think about how you'd bring that up respectfully, even with short notice.
Give it your best shot.
Okay, I'll share mine. I'd say, "Sorry for the short notice, but would it be okay if I left a bit early today? Something personal came up, and I really appreciate your understanding. It's honest, and it doesn't over-explain the details."
That's a great balance. Respectful. But you're not giving a whole speech about it either.
Exactly. And that's really the key with talking to a supervisor, being clear and calm without sounding nervous or overly apologetic.
Amazing work today, everyone. We've covered problems at home, Ubers, coffee shops, directions, running late, small talk, asking for help, and now talking to your boss.
And there's one more everyday situation we're saving for next time: returning or exchanging something you bought.
Oh, this one's great too, because dealing with customer service can get confusing fast if you're not familiar with the right expressions. So stay tuned, because that's exactly where we're headed next.
All right, this next one's extremely useful because honestly, everyone deals with this at some point, whether it's the wrong size, a defect, or you just changed your mind.
Exactly, and there are a few key phrases that make this whole situation way easier. The first one is, "I bought this yesterday, but..." It's a natural way to explain the context before you even get to the problem. For example, "I bought this yesterday, but it doesn't fit."
It sets everything up nicely so the person already understands the situation before you even ask for anything. The second one is, "I'd like to return it." Short, direct, and polite. No need to overcomplicate it.
And the third one is, "Can I get a refund?" This one's perfect for when you'd rather get your money back than exchange it for something else.
All three of these work really well together. And honestly, once you know them, this whole situation becomes way less intimidating.
Okay, let's set the scene. You bought a jacket yesterday, But once you got home and tried it on again, you noticed the zipper's actually broken.
That's so annoying, but honestly, pretty common. So you'd head back to the store, and you could start with, "Hi, I bought this yesterday, but the zipper's broken. I didn't notice it in the store."
That's such a clean way to explain it. You're giving context first, so the employee already understands before you even ask for a solution.
Right. And then you could follow up with, "I'd like to return it. Do you think that would be possible?" Polite, but still clear about what you want.
And sometimes they'll ask if you want an exchange instead. If you'd rather just get your money back, that's where the third chunk comes in. You could say, "Actually, I'd prefer a refund if that's okay."
Or even more directly, "Can I get a refund instead of an exchange?" Straight to the point. No confusion.
And let's say it's not something broken. Maybe you just bought the wrong size. You could say, "I bought this yesterday, but it's actually a size too small. Would it be possible to exchange it for a medium?"
Exactly. Same structure, different situation, and that's the whole point of learning chunks like these.
Right, and most of the time, as long as you have the receipt and explain calmly, stores are pretty flexible about it.
All right, let's throw a couple of situations your way.
Here's your first scenario. You bought a pair of shoes online, and when they arrived, you noticed they're actually a completely different color from what was shown on the website. What do you say when you go to return them?
Pause it and answer out loud before we keep going.
I'll share mine first. I'd probably say, "Hi, I bought this yesterday, but it's actually the wrong color. It doesn't match what was shown online. I'd like to return it, please." Clear, honest, and it explains exactly what went wrong.
Nice. That covers everything they'd need to know right away.
Now here's your second scenario, and it's a bit trickier. You bought a blender a few days ago, but it stopped working after just one use, and you don't have the original box anymore, only the receipt.
Pause it again and think about how you'd explain that, even without the packaging.
Give it your best shot before we continue.
Okay, I'll share mine. I'd say, "Hi, I bought this a few days ago, but it stopped working after the first use. I don't have the box anymore, but I do have the receipt. Can I get a refund?" Honest about the situation and straight to what you want.
That's a solid way to handle it. Calm, clear, and it doesn't hide any details.
Exactly. And that honesty usually gets you a much better response than getting frustrated right away.
Great job again, everyone. That's problems at home, Ubers, coffee shops, directions, running late, small talk, asking for help, talking to your boss, and now returns.
And there's one more classic situation coming up: ordering food at a restaurant.
This one's a must, because between the menu, the waiter, and sometimes unexpected questions, there's a lot happening at once. So don't go anywhere, because that's exactly what we're covering next.
All right, this one's a favorite. But we're not just covering the easy part. We're also getting into what happens when something actually goes wrong.
Exactly, because ordering food isn't always as simple as pointing at the menu. Sometimes you have questions, sometimes you need to change something, and sometimes your order just comes out wrong. The first chunk is, "Could I get that without?" It's perfect for customizing your order without overcomplicating things, like, "Could I get that without onions?"
Super useful, especially if you have allergies or just don't like certain ingredients. The second chunk is, "This isn't quite what I ordered." It's a polite, non-confrontational way to point out a mistake instead of sounding annoyed or overly formal.
Right. It gets the message across clearly, but it doesn't sound like you're accusing anyone of doing something wrong on purpose.
Okay, let's set the scene. You're at a restaurant and the menu has a dish that sounds good, but you're not totally sure what one of the ingredients actually is.
That happens constantly, especially with menus that use fancy or unfamiliar words. So you could just ask the waiter, "Sorry, quick question. What exactly comes with this dish?" Simple, and it clears things up before you commit to it.
And let's say you like the dish, but there's one ingredient you'd rather skip. That's where our first chunk fits perfectly. You could say, "Could I get that without the mushrooms, please?"
Exactly, and most places are pretty flexible about small changes like that.
Now here's where it gets a bit more real. Let's say your food finally arrives, but it's not what you ordered. Maybe they brought you chicken instead of the fish you asked for.
This is where a lot of learners freeze up because they don't want to seem rude, but you really do need to say something.
Right, and that's exactly why our second chunk works so well. You could calmly say, "Excuse me, sorry, but this isn't quite what I ordered. I actually asked for the fish."
It's clear, it's polite, and it doesn't put any blame on anyone. It just states the fact and lets them fix it.
And sometimes the problem's smaller, like the order's right, but something's missing, like the side dish. You could say, "This looks great, but I think the fries might be missing from my order."
Same energy, calm, clear, and it gets solved quickly without any awkward tension.
All right, let's give you a couple of real situations to handle.
Here's your first scenario. You're at a restaurant with friends, and when your plate arrives, you realize it's actually a completely different dish from what you ordered, and everyone else already got their food. What do you say to the waiter?
Pause it and answer out loud before we keep going.
I'll share mine first. I'd probably say, "Excuse me, sorry, but this isn't quite what I ordered. I actually asked for the pasta, not this. Would it be possible to fix that?" Calm, clear, and it doesn't hold up the table too much.
Nice, that handles it without any drama.
Now here's your second scenario, and it's a bit trickier. You're ordering a dish, but you're not sure about one of the ingredients. And on top of that, you'd like to swap the side dish for something else on the menu.
Pause it again and think about how you'd handle both things at once without confusing the waiter.
Give it your best shot.
Okay, I'll share mine. I'd say, "Quick question, does this come with any nuts? And also, could I get that without the salad and get extra rice instead?" Covers both the question and the change in one smooth request.
That's a great example. Efficient, but still polite about it.
Exactly. And honestly, waiters deal with requests like that all the time, so there's really nothing to feel awkward about.
Amazing work today, everyone. We've now covered problems at home, Ubers, coffee shops, directions, running late, small talk, asking for help, talking to your boss, returns, and now restaurants.
And we're saving us best for last, meeting new people and keeping a natural conversation going, without those awkward silences that make everything feel forced.
This one ties everything together, because at the end of the day, all these chunks matter most when you're actually connecting with someone. So stick around, because we're closing out the episode with that one.
All right, our last one. And honestly, this might be the most important skill of all, because you can know every chunk we've taught today, But if the conversation dies after 2 sentences, none of it really matters.
Exactly. So let's give you 2 final chunks. The first one is, what brings you to? It's such a natural way to start a conversation with someone new. Way better than just, hi, how are you? Which usually ends the conversation right there. For example, what brings you to this event?
It opens the door for a real answer instead of a one-word response. The second chunk is, that reminds me of. This one's perfect for keeping a conversation flowing because it lets you connect what someone just said to your own story or experience.
Right. Instead of the conversation just stopping after they finish talking, you jump back in naturally, and suddenly you're both sharing more.
Okay, let's set the scene. You're at some kind of event, maybe a work thing or a friend's gathering, and you don't really know anyone.
That's such an uncomfortable feeling standing there with your drink, not sure who to talk to.
Right. So let's say you spot someone standing alone too. You could walk up and say, "Hey, I don't think we've met. What brings you to this event?"
And they might say something like, "Oh, my friend actually invited me. I don't really know anyone else here either." And that's your opening to keep it going.
Exactly. And that's where the second chunk comes in. You could say, "That reminds me of the first time I came to one of these. I didn't know a single person either."
See, now you've shared something personal, and the conversation naturally keeps moving instead of dying out.
And this works with almost any topic. If someone mentions they just got back from a trip, you could say, "Oh, that reminds me of a trip I took last year. It was honestly a bit of a disaster."
Right. And suddenly you're telling a story, they're telling a story, and the conversation just flows without any awkward gaps.
Exactly. And honestly, that's the real goal with everything we've taught today. Not perfect grammar, just genuine, natural conversation.
All right, one last round before we wrap up.
Here's your first scenario. You're at a party and you just met someone new, but after the first couple of questions, there's an awkward silence, and you're not sure what to say next. How do you keep the conversation going?
Pause it and answer out loud before we finish.
I'll go first. I'd probably say, "So, what do you usually do outside of work?" That reminds me, I actually just started a new hobby myself. It shifts the topic naturally, without forcing anything.
Nice. That keeps things light and easy.
Now, here's your last scenario. You're talking to someone, and they mention something you have zero experience with, like a hobby or a place you've never heard of, and you don't want the conversation to just stop there.
Pause it one more time and think about how you'd keep it going even without much to add.
Give it your best shot.
All right, I'll share mine. I'd say something like, "Oh, I've actually never tried that. What got you into it?" That reminds me, I've always wanted to try something new like that myself. It shows genuine curiosity, and it keeps the door open.
That's such a natural response. Honestly, curiosity goes a long way in conversations.
Exactly, and that's really the secret. You don't need to be an expert on everything. You just need to stay curious and keep the conversation moving.
And that wraps up today's episode. We covered problems at home, Ubers, coffee shops, directions, running late, small talk with coworkers, asking for help, talking to your boss, returns, restaurants, and meeting new people.
That's 11 real situations, packed with chunks you can actually use, not just memorize and forget.
So here's your homework, listener. go back through this episode and shadow the conversations. Repeat what Max and I said, copy our rhythm, our pronunciation, and don't be afraid to pause and speak out loud again and again.
Remember, your mouth is a muscle, and the only way it gets stronger is with practice, not just theory.
If this episode helped you, share it with someone who's also learning English, and we'll see you in the next one.
Until next time, keep speaking, keep practicing, and we'll catch you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.